What's up, humans? Welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Today, I have a very special guest who I saw from tweets released by my friend Toby Martinez at the Roswell Daily Record. Uh, this is a man who used to be in the Air Force, and he is part of the Rendlesham Forest UFO case. If I could say, he's the most important person in that case. Mr. John Burroughs. How are you, sir?
I'm
Welcome
doing
to
good.
Psicoactivo.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. First of all, I want to start by telling you thank you for your service because I do have the utmost respect for people who were in the military. So thank you for your service, sir. Um, I do. So basically, when I saw the tweet, just to give you like a an idea of what interested me on the topic, because I already knew about this case. I've been following the Professor Simon Holland's interviews with you, and you guys have been doing amazing work. Uh, Very interesting, very compelling. But this tweet talks about an email exchange you had with people from News Nation, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Correct. This is News Nation is one of many that have reached out to my lawyer, Pat Fresconia, and I. Then they want, and I want to make this clear because there's been some online, there's been a chatter going on about what they want. Okay. They want the documents that I received from the VA for my settlement. I ended up getting a VA disability settlement and VA care for the injuries that happened in Rendlesham Forest. My military records, my medical records are still classified. And let me clear this up for all the naysayers. If you've been in the military, you'll know if you're in something that they classify for whatever reason, and I'm not telling you exactly why these are classified, only they know. If you're involved in an incident like that, all the documents to support that incident will be classified. And it will be up to the people involved how or if they want to release any of those documents. So, for whatever reason, my medical records were classified and I could not have access to it. United States senators couldn't have access to it. The civilian doctors weren't allowed access to them. The only doctors that have recently gotten access to it is the VA doctors, and that's all streamlined through the chief of cardiology at Indianapolis in Indiana.
Because when I started hearing about these injuries from UAP incidents, the first person I heard talking about this was Dr. Gary Nolan. He spoke about it on Fox News. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah, Gary Nolan, him and Colin Kelleher, Gary flew from San Francisco down to Vegas and they drove together down to Flagstaff, Arizona, where I was at the time, and they tried to get my DNA. They wanted my DNA and I declined. So, yeah, he actually did go on and talk a little bit about it on Tucker. He talked about the Rendlesham case, but he completely botched what happened in the Rendlesham case, and he mixed up myself and another individual on exactly what took place as far as the settlement.
What happened at Rendlesham? Just a quick rundown for the people who don't know about the case. This was in 1980,
Yes, the
correct?
incident, and I'll lay it out for people to understand. The incident took place in December of 1980. Now, there was other things that happened prior to our incident, and there were things that went on after our incident. So this wasn't an exclusive time frame of over 3 days where different things have been seen and take place. But these particular days are the ones that are most documented on what took place. And it was a 3 night period. It started when we came on duty, when I came on duty on my last midnight shift, it would have been on a Thursday night, December 25th, and it took place into the early morning hours of December 26th. It started about 0300 on Boxing Day. And what happened was we saw some strange lights outside the base perimeter, and the guy that initially saw it felt it went into the forest. Sent down a security unit. They verified there was something in the forest. There was lights emitting in the forest. So he talked to CSC and they decided to send a 3-man team, myself and 2 security guys into the forest to investigate what took place. One of the reasons why is we went out there, and there's been debates on this, but it was a fact. They contacted RAPCON and Bentwaters radar, and CSC and the command post went through Eastern radar, and there was confirmation that there was something seen on radar that went down into the forest. That's the only reason why we could go off base. There was no immediate threat to the base. There was something that appeared to go down into the forest just outside the base perimeter. We went out into the forest. We had some kind of an encounter. And what I mean is we encountered something of unknown origin. We weren't sure what it was. This went on for over an hour. Eventually, it disappeared. And we came back to the base, went in for a quick briefing in the morning, and then went back out to the site and found some evidence of something in the area where we saw this, whatever it was. There was some physical evidence to support that something was there, what we saw. Okay, that was night 1. Night 2, we went on break. The midnight shift light that took over, D flight, they saw some strange lights again. They investigated. A shift commander got involved, allegedly, because I never heard this firsthand, just secondhand. She had an encounter with something which shut her vehicle off, caused her to lose her composure, and she got relieved of duty from that. On night 3 is when it came back again. Colonel Halt at this time got notified, and he and the team went out there, and they started having interaction. There's a tape out there called the Halt tape. You can find it online, where he's talking about what's going on as they're out there. And eventually I met up with this team, and I was allowed to go forward when there was some lights coming towards us with another individual part of his team, and we had an interaction with this. And people keep asking, which night did I get injured? Not sure, but the first night's more gray area. But the third night, the guy that was with me saw me go into this ball of light, or this light, and he saw me disappear and then reappear.
Do you not remember this?
No, both nights when I got close to something, I have no real memory of what took place, why I got close to it.
Whoa. Okay.
So that's the gist of it. Then it got covered up. And what I mean by covered up, it didn't get out. They leaked out a story to some investigators in the UK saying there was an alien contact in the base. That pretty much killed the story for, I think it would have been, 80 to about, I think it was 83 or 84, when they continued, these investigators, to pursue it. There was some stuff done in the States, and they were able to get a document, and it's online, called the Halt Memo. And News of the World ran with the story, and then it was off to the races after that. Everybody started getting involved, CNN, everybody else wanting to know what happened in Rendlesham.
And one of the main aspects of this recent story is that I get the sense that you haven't been allowed to tell your story. Is that accurate?
Well, as I said on a video we posted yesterday, corporate America / the news people, they want to do it their way, and they get these producers that don't have any clue to what they're dealing with. I mean, I'll give you an example. Unidentified. If you watch that series, the first year was a debacle. There was so much criticism of the way it was handled, ran, the way the stories were, presented, the false information or the misinformation about the stories that was presented, including they screwed up Rendlesham. And when they came and met with me and filmed me, the producer, or whoever, whatever you wanted to give her title, she was the person behind the series and the show and all the other shows, didn't even pay attention to what was going on. She let Lou run the interview. So, and then they screwed the story up. And then when they got back to me and wanted to know what I thought about it, would I participate in season 2? I said, no. I said, you screwed season 1 up. And her response was, well, we did the best we could. I go, no, you didn't. You didn't come back to me to run by the layout of how you're presenting the story. I said, if you would have, I would have straightened out what was wrong and you would have got it right. But because of what you just done, there's a whole group of people, over 1 million plus, that have seen this story, that think what took place is not what happened. So no, I don't want to participate any longer. And at that point, then they still put some of my interview for season 1 and season 2 at the end. They presented some more of what I had to say, but they constantly screw this up. They don't understand this. They don't have a background in this, and they don't know how to present it properly. I stand by that. And I say that about Rendlesham especially. Maybe some other events have been put on with good producers, and if there has been and people are happy with it, I'd like to meet that producer. Professor Simon, I've been working with on the series you mentioned, he has a grasp of science and technology and stuff. And we've worked well together putting out this series that we've been putting on based off the weaponization of UAPs, how Rendlesham ties into all that and how it ties into what people are seeing today.
That's actually the best content that I've seen on the case. And there's been like 5 different ways it has been presented from different media. And that's the one that I like the most because it's the one that breaks it down the best, to be honest with you. So kudos.
They're still trying, the media is still trying to present that, and I understand there's a large audience that may have never heard of any of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they're trying to bring into the fold. But ultimately, they're still going back to try to get somebody to say, well, I saw this or this took place. We're way past that now. We've had the hearings up in the hill. All this stuff is taking place. Bigelow got exactly what he wanted when he went on George Knapp right before this whole thing started, when he said we're going to get confirmation, not disclosure. And this was all based off of what they did with the funding from Harry Reid. And there was a group before that, and I don't have in front of me the group, what they were called, but there was a group that had Edgar Mitchell in it and some of these other people that have been in this over the years. And they did a big think tank on it. Then they got some funding from Harry Reid's, from Congress or secret money. And then they turned around and then they put together this whole project. And one of the interesting things that I saw that I wasn't even aware of on the Wi-Fi is he did a show where Puthoff, he had an interview from Hal Puthoff saying that he was picked by the DOD to look at all the documents that the DOD held on UFOs, just like what happened with Project Condign. Project Condign was a British study that they did, and they had an engineer look into that, and he wrote a report. They didn't declassify the source material, but they had this report they wrote that was classified UK eyes only, which was secret, and then eventually it got released on FOIA. But it described what was in their files, and the conclusion of the individual that wrote it was, it's real, it exists, it's under intelligent control, UAPs, and that they need to study it further for weaponization. Plus, it also, in that document, it talks about the Rendlesham Forest incident and that we were exposed to UAP radiation.
This weaponization concept keeps coming up, man.
Well, that's because I've been beating the drum on this for a long time. I am going to take credit for this partly. There's probably other people out there that have been saying this for a while too. I'm not saying that, but I wrote a book with my co-author was James Warr. We wrote a book called Weaponization of a UAP. And this is all about what they're doing. They are trying to weaponize this. And so for people to really believe that when they were in government before and they could talk about it, and now that they're out there trying to pressure people that took their old jobs, that they're going to talk about it. The reason why it can never be talked about is because it involves weapon systems and weaponization and the study of this phenomenon, and they're not going to release what they know about it. So therefore, there's not going to be disclosure. And when I say disclosure, there's not going to be disclosure on what a UAP is. Now, is there other stuff going on? Very well could be, because I get pushback on that all the time. Well, I saw this different. I saw this happened, that happened. That has nothing to do with this. Fair enough. But if you really look at UAPs and you study the report, the Condign report, and some of the stuff that these guys have talked about off the cuff, they're talking about if you have an encounter with something like this, it affects how you see it, how you relate to it, how you remember it, or if you remember it, and everything else. So these frequencies that it emits can cause you to think it's something and it's not. It's like a chameleon. So again, I wanted to emphasize today, again, I want to say this over and over. There are possibly or probably are other things other than this particular part, but this is the part that this particular group read by Christopher Mellon and Hal Puthoff behind the scenes are driving. They're driving UAPs. They're driving the Tic Tac videos and stuff. That is like a UAP. That is not like a hard craft or biological beings that are here or people felt they saw or had interactions with. This is a UAP is more of an energy type form that can cause different effects. And it appears it can be used based on the documents we found and worked on in this series and are continuing to work on, is and has been weaponized. And it's
Do you think
currently
this
being
UAP
utilized.
is, for example, the Tic Tac? Do you think that could have been man-made already, or
It's
or
here's the thing, and this is how I'll leave it for now on this. I went out and had this encounter. When we walked back out of that forest, we didn't say it was alien. We just couldn't say what it was, but we definitely felt like there was no way possible that we had any type of technology that could have created the effects we encountered. Now, fast forward 40 years later, we found that more than enough evidence to support a lot of what we saw and how it can be explained through man-made technology. And if you follow Christopher Green in the article he did for the British newspaper, he said he studied the people that have had encounters, and he felt every single one of them can be explained by interaction with man-made technology. Those were his
okay,
words in the newspaper that he did. And that was based off that paper he wrote, the biological paper he wrote that was declassified and given to Senator John McCain's committee. Okay. That was given to them, and they were approaching his committee when he was still alive to get funding for this very technology that these 38 papers were covering.
okay. I now that I have you here, I have to ask you about this because there's been so much confusion about the Havana syndrome.
The Havana
Uh,
syndrome.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's the difference between what you experience with that radiation and what they're calling the Havana syndrome?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, dropping little tidbits. Okay. The Havana syndrome is a frequency that's utilized to affect a person. It can cause effects on them. Okay. They don't go into great detail exactly what those effects are, other than what the people that have come forward and said they've had physical effects from. So, what they're implying to me, based off the work that we've been doing on weaponization series, documents that we found, is that's why they're saying that. It involves frequency modulation, which goes back to what a UAP can do. And most people don't want to study this. They don't want to look at this. In fact, Project Condign was out in 2006, and it was finally released in the book I did with Jim Peniston and Nick Pope called Encounters in Rendlesham Forest, and we did a chapter on Project Condign. And that's when we first introduced to the public that Rendlesham was in that report. No one, all these UFO experts, people even the people like David Clark that got the report out and looked at it, no one saw that paragraph in there that the individuals that experienced the Rendlesham Forest incident were exposed to UAP radiation. And that's another thing. If you go back, Green and his group have started pushing terahertz and UAP radiation since 2012. And that's the time frame when I started to try to get my settlement and was moving forward with the VA to get it. And the Senator Kyle's office was involved, and they denied access to my medical records. And that's when they started putting this out. And then they've also went into this, and a book by Annie Jacobson called Phenomena. And they talk about the study and how they're studying people that have had interactions with the phenomenon itself. There's a lot of evidence out there, but the problem is most of the people in ufology don't want to include this in the possibilities of what we're dealing with.
Why?
Because they're still stuck on what's been gleaned to them for 30 years, the nuts and bolts. We have a craft traveling millions of miles, light years, or whatever you want to call it, from Zeta Reticuli that have biological beings that are like us or somewhat like us. I mean, when Bigelow did his interview on 60 Minutes. I'll never forget the reporter. He goes, "They're here." Or he said, they're, I forget how he said it, but we put that in our weaponization video. But she said, "We don't have to go looking for them. They're here." Because she said, "Because they're here." And they are. This UAP phenomenon is here right now. And they're studying it, they're working on it, they're utilizing it in weapon systems. And Knapp just did a recent piece where he said the race is on, and that's what Congress is being prepped for. They want their money to develop this technology or continue their work on this technology because they've been working on it. And quantum is really a big driving force that they've been able to break through now in a lot of ways. But they want this funding to create these weapons, and they have to get Congress to go along with giving the money. And the first step you have to do is get Congress to understand that there's these black programs that are out there that they have no oversight over. And so when Congress gets told that and they start to see proof that it's true, then they get upset, and that's putting pressure on these different areas that are working on this technology. They're not looking for disclosure. They're not looking to tell the American public what a UAP is or what kind of interaction we've had, because that would be selling the beans to China and Russia and all the other countries that are fastly rising up, the military food chain.
I happen to think that disclosure is like more of a personal experience, because people come to terms with the fact that we may not be alone or we're not alone. And
but again, the problem with that, and I'm just going to add this caveat: what disclosure is a broad-based word, right?
yeah,
So you, in your own mind, you're confirming that you saw something and it's there, but you don't have the answers of what it was. So it's maybe a little teeny piece of, well, I saw it, so I believe it's real. But most people, I've yet to find anybody to be able to tell you exactly what it is. We're working hard on these documents and talking to people behind the scenes. We're getting a better lay, but we still don't totally understand what a UAP totally is.
yeah, and
So I
you
haven't
know,
got the full answer, and I haven't
yeah,
encountered. So
people that like they keep saying whistleblowers coming forward, and David Grusch came forward, and I keep seeing that there's no real evidence, such as documents or videos, but now with what you told us this weekend, it seems that you are perhaps one of the only people who has this evidence in the form of this document. And how are you going to release it? You said you're going to do a series, a video.
no, I'm gonna do my own production with people I trust. In other words, I'm going to be involved in a production, the people that understand what's going on, and will interview the people that deserve the credit. I was a victim of the Cold War. I went out and was doing my job and got injured. I would not be alive today if it wasn't for people like Cheryl Bennett, the late Senator John McCain, Senator Kyle's office, and the staffer there that uncovered my records are classified. Pat Frasconia, the lawyer that was driving this. I would be gone. I would have died. And I have to give credit to one individual directly that I'm not comfortable with because he's a spook. He was CIA, and he's a contractor with the DIA and CIA, or maybe not now. He may be retired today, but he wasn't back when he contacted us, a few years ago. And that's Christopher Green, because he wrote a document that was a 2-page document that was given through my attorney, and we gave it to the VA. And that's when the DOD got involved, because he laid out exactly what happened to me. And what I mean by happened to me, what injured me. He knew exactly what to tell them and how to figure out what was causing me, why I was dying, and how to cure the problem. And he laid out exactly in it what the technology was that did it to me.
That's really strange.
But he also, you can see some of that on an above top secret post he did, where I was going to go quiet on this. My intentions was, after I got my settlement, we announced that the Open Minds Conference at the time was the largest, UFO conference. And I wanted to thank everybody that helped me, give credit where credit was due. And I was going to go away. During the presentation, two lawyers stood up in the question and answering and wanted to help Pat get my medical records declassified. And I said, no, I'm not going to poke the bear. But ultimately, the Mellon group, at the time, I didn't know Mellon was involved, but he is. They're all working with them. They're all working together. Green dropped that bombshell in above top secret, and they've been pursuing me ever since to get these documents so they can utilize them the way they want to utilize them to control the narrative on what's going on.
Whoa. Okay. I don't know what to say to that. So thank you for sharing. That's what I gotta say. I heard in this video you did with Toby yesterday that a new whistleblower would be coming forward on News Nation, but they wanted your documents to present the case. How does that make logic?
Well, I'll give you a little insight. It may not be a new whistleblower. It may be. I'm gonna give you a little summation of what we think is going to happen with this, and we might be wrong, but just based on the timeline, the interaction at the emails, and Pat, my lawyer, talked to the producer. He brought up Grusch and Lou's name, and he said, "Are they the whistleblowers?" And she said, "I'm under an NDA. I can't discuss it." So she didn't deny that they weren't involved. And remember, Lou's book gets released next week. And in the book, he talks about me being injured in the line of duty. So our speculation is they're going to do something on his book on News Nation next week to promo it, and he'll probably be the one within this hour special discussing my injuries. But here's the next little tidbit. He asked her directly, and this is where it really got arrogant to us. He said, "So, you don't want to do anything, a backstory on what happened to him?" "No." "So do you have any other military personnel that are out there that you're going to use to cover what, to present the evidence that this whistleblower is saying is true?" "Nope. We only have John Burroughs' story, and we want his documents." And Pat ended the conversation, and then politely the return, after he talked to me, the response email was back. And that's what I'm saying. They're being driven by this group. Wake up, people. Mellon and stuff, they're driving the narrative on this. They're completely in control with the press. Who does the press go to when something comes out? Who drives all this? The only time, even when the Congress, they'll make Burchett or one of those guys will go on camera because they're leaking the stuff out, they're still the ones that are the faces of all this. So everybody's putting their apples or their eggs all on these guys. That if you look at Mellon's family owns a bank and they own a university that the specialty is engineering. Hal Puthoff ran Stargate, and he's got a project right now, a multi-million-dollar project working on this through the government right now, and it's a black project. I could go down the list with these guys. Lou Elizondo resigned from the government because he was upset with it, then went back to work for them, became a government contractor. Hey, when's the last time you worked for somebody, got pissed off and quit and said they're all full of crap, and then turned around and went right back to work for them afterwards? This is all facts. Danny Sheehan came out, and I knew Lou was working for him. They offered to bring me up there and get a briefing through NORAD. And all I'm getting at is Sheehan dropped the ball on this, and then they get upset when this stuff comes out. It's not my problem. I don't trust them.
Yeah,
and I do not believe for 1 minute. 2017, we've had all these people. Every year we're going to have disclosure. Do we have it? No, and we're not. We're not going to get disclosure.
I hope at least confirmation does happen, though, because
confirmation's already happened. It's happened through the Project Condign report, through Congress holding hearings, through these videos leaking out. There is something out there that can't be explained. But that's what Bigelow said. If you go back, he did an interview with George Knapp several years ago, and he said, we're going to get confirmation, and it's going to stop. We're not going to go into the nuts and bolts of it. what's behind it or anything else, but we're going to get confirmation. And we need confirmation to get the brightest and best to work on this going forward. And who's working on this? Is it the white world? Are the white world getting any funding for this? No, it's the black world. The black world is the ones that are getting these contracts. These engineers will all go and work inside government. Putoff went back into the black world with this project he's working on right now. But they want to sit there with a straight face and tell you that they believe there's going to, that they hit around at it, they do the double speak, but ultimately they're trying to convince everybody that this is their cause. They want to expose to the world what this is, and they want the government to do it. And no one's asked them the question, what would be the, well, actually I did. I've got an email. I had an interaction with Lou recently, and I asked him point blank on a couple of things that I'm not going to make public yet. But the bottom line is they're not going to disclose classified material. And anything of value, which by the way would lead to disclosure, is not going to get released.
We've gotten that sense for a while now, haven't we? Like,
well,
that...
I think more people are getting that sense. The mainstream press or the cable news press that's looked at this, they don't even know what to do with it. If it gets to Congress and there's a press release or stuff going on, they'll report on it. But have you noticed how everything else they do these panels and do all this stuff with? There's never been a panel on these hearings or what it means, or none of them have dived into what this technology could be, what we know about it, what we're doing with it, or what it is. No one's touching this. No one's doing it.
That's a shame, because I wanted to ask you about the effects of this, because you said, I've heard you say a couple of things. I'm gonna run them by you. You said that physics will change fundamentally with the UFO phenomenon when it's discovered. What did you mean by that?
Just short, because I don't have the evidence to support it. Quantum is a game changer. It's equivalent to the Manhattan Project, and physics was behind that. As physics advance, the computing and the energy sources advance, and the study of this phenomenon, which it involves physics, unknown physics, as far as to the world, not necessarily to the black world. That kind of stuff, it's just like the Tic Tac when you look at it. What is it? Nothing we have can do that. That's what I said about what happened to us in 1980. We walked out of that field. There's nothing we have that could do that, but we did. So there's been advancements in physics, and it's just going to be a new way of weapons, just like the atomic bomb. And this will change warfare, completely change warfare when it finally gets, put into main, full production and stuff. This will change the way war is fought.
I happen to think that psi abilities have been studied for decades too, and that's already been weaponized long ago, and it's having profound effects in society right now. And those groups are also responsible for that. The black world that you talked about. You also said that the phenomenon affects perception of each person depending on their DNA. What do you mean by that?
Well, I didn't necessarily tie DNA to that. You did. But ultimately, if you look at the Condon report and you look at some of these other things that have come out, including the papers, the 38 papers that were presented to McCain, the declassified part of them, they talk about how frequencies can affect the mind. All you have to do is go research the God's helmet, which a guy by the name of Persinger was working on. And when they strapped that helmet on a person and they affected the mind with frequencies, it altered their perception of what they thought they saw and what was going on. And if you go back and really want to go back right after our event, Chuck Tuccaro, who was a reporter for CNN, there's videos out there by him that talked about how frequencies can not only affect what you see, but can communicate with you. In the video, he actually does a test and he shows how he got something implanted in his mind.
Whoa.
And he He was a reporter that did the investigation on Bentwaters. It was called the Bentwaters incident at the time. And then he left and he went and did this special assignment series. Shortly after that, he left CNN and went to work for Andy Marshall. And he's gone now. He passed just recently, but he was the top think tank on exotic technologies. Period. So there's a video out there back in the early 80s that showed how frequencies, he did a test on himself and how it can affect what you see, and even what they could put something in his mind.
Is there any sense of time dilation happening back when
that's part of this whole UAP stuff? It creates like a time dilation bubble.
Did you feel that when you had the event, or do you not remember that?
That's again, the only thing I could tell you after night one, mine and Penniston's watch were slow, which is part of time dilation. And then when Adrian Bastenzi was with me that night, saw me go into it and look like phased out, that would be part of me phasing into a different dimension. It's hard to explain. I'm not a scientist, so I'll get attacked for this. But basically, the bubble slows down, can slow down or speed up, I believe. And what it is that when something disappears, it's still really there. But the effect that your dimension or the timeline you're in is different. It's slowed down.
Okay. So it's like a bubble.
Yeah, it's a time dilation bubble. It's real. You can go out and research it.
Wow, that's cool. Okay. Man, I wanted to ask you about David Grusch, if you had just a little time for that last one before we leave.
Yeah.
What do you think about David Grusch coming forward based on everything you've talked about here?
Well, Pat and I had an hour plus interview. We talked with him. We interviewed him. He wanted to talk to me about my event, what went on. He was, at the time, he was represented to me as IG. That he was the person that Lou filed an IG complaint, and he was part of the team that was going to investigate what's true and what's not. So we had a meeting with him, and he seemed dedicated, driven, skeptical of what was being said, but he listened to what I had to say, was going to look into that and other things. And then we never heard back from him, other than an email came that we were invited to go to NORAD for a briefing and meet with Hobby Loeb's team. But that never happened, because then the hearing stuff started coming up and they wanted me to go up for that, and I declined. And I declined because they're not going to do this right. And I feel Grusch was left out to hang to dry on this.
How so?
Because it's not his credentials. No one went after him for his credentials, his background. But he didn't even have another. Why didn't Lou support him? Why didn't Lou go in that interview? Why didn't Lou testify in front of Congress? But this is all just hearsay. In other words, he said, well, yeah, I've talked to people and they've told me this stuff. But okay, he doesn't release who they talked to. Well, they've identified sites where this has taken place, but he hasn't been to them, and they won't release where these sites are. You know what I'm saying? He's looked at documents that he can't release, and he didn't have access or clearance to look at the source material. So it's a good story, and I don't think he's lying, but it's just drip, 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 no proof. Sometime, somewhere, if they really want to move this forward, somebody has got to show proof that there's something here.
Yeah,
other than what
I agree.
In other words, there's proof out there in videos and stuff, but there's no final proof on, okay, what is it?
The quote unquote smoking gun, right?
Well, yeah, a smoking gun. There's a lot of smoking guns to this.
Yeah.
But there needs to be some proof. Here's a document. We've studied this, That does make my document a little important, but I don't think it's as important as some people may think it is. And what I mean by that is, this is just something that proves that I was injured in the line of duty
by a UAP.
That the government exists. In other words, the government existed. Bentwaters took place. They agreed. The memo supports it. People have supported that I was there. We could prove I was there. Then they've covered up. Oh, and that was the one other thing we haven't talked about today. They completely expunged my military career from 79 to 82. They tried to say I wasn't in the military from 79 to 82. They said I didn't come in until 82. And McCain's office was able to get that overturned. But that was part of the cover up.
Whoa.
So yes, that's why this story's got to be laid out from beginning to end, not a 5-minute clip on News Nation or a video. All of Cheryl Bennett's stuff needs to come out, what she did, all the stuff that went on. She was involved with the Department of Justice, the Inspector General. That whole story needs to be told. What Pat and I were doing legally behind the scenes, driving a possible lawsuit. All this stuff needs to be laid out and culminate with the documents being shown and what documents we used that they agreed that they took as evidence and were part of my case settlement with the VA. So yes, the VA's acknowledged that I was injured in the line of duty during the Rendlesham Forest event. And that's what we'll be able to prove.
That's awesome. Any ETA on that estimate?
Estimate right now is early fall. We're putting it all
Wow,
together
that's
right
quick.
now.
Holy
Well, that's
crap.
it's time to stop drip, drip, drip. I mean, the
I agree.
the final decision by me was made after the arrogance of New Nation and the fact that this group won't leave it alone. I didn't know I was going to be in Lou's book. He never talked to me about it. Bam. When his 197 pages got released, I don't know how, by accident or purposely, he talks about me in his book. Didn't talk to me about it, didn't interview me about it, but he put me in his book. Constantly, Gary Nolan goes on Tucker Carlson, talks about it, screws it up. George Knapp talks about it, screws it up. Tucker Carlson goes on Joe Rogan and talks about people being injured, but no one's laying it out. No one wants to put the whole story out. They just want to, and none of these producers, including, and I say this today, you're getting this from me, I don't believe Russ Colcart is the right person to do this either. I don't. He's trying to play this devil's advocate guy, but he doesn't understand the grasp of this because he's in bed with the very people he's playing devil's advocate with. He's in bed with these guys. They're controlling him. He's not controlling them. Wow. So I said it, and that's how I feel.
Okay. I'm not going to touch that because.
But see, I'm not afraid of them. I'm not out there trying to sell my next radio show or
you are who you are. I mean, you are John Burroughs. Of course, you can say whatever you want. You've been injured by a UAP. You got the right at least to say whatever you want. To whoever.
People have a right to say what they want. I tried to play along for a while, and what I mean by play along was meet with them, listen to them, look at their narrative, what they told me behind the scenes, the interactions I had with all these people, which is a big long list. And as it went along, I could smell bullshit. I could smell, in the military, they call it raise the bullshit flag. Well, it didn't take long before the flag was going up the flagpole. And one of the things that really pushed me over the top is when I was doing Phenomenon Radio with Linda Moulton Howe, and she ended up selling a piece of metamaterials, alleged metamaterials.
Parts.
Yes, and I say alleged not because I don't believe it, but I never saw the materials or anything else. So there were some materials that she had that she'd held on for years that were bought by the Put-Off Group for a small amount of money and then sold to the DOD for a large contract. And he got the contract. And all along when I met with him and talked to him, I felt like maybe he was the one guy that was going to maybe try to work within the realms of disclosure. And then when he went and did that, and I had a phone call with him, and I said, wait a minute, you're going back to the black world, huh, Hal? And he goes, yeah, I have to. He goes, I couldn't get the money from the white world. And I go, wait a minute, you really thought that you were going to get the money you needed to do this project through the white world, and the DOD was going to let you do it? You're working on a project that's military based. The white world's not going to have any access to it other than they'll pull scientists from the white world into the black world and they can't talk about it anymore. I said, so to me, this tells me you had no desire to go with disclosure. And he never really said he did. He just talked a little bit when he came out and talked about technology and stuff. He never really came out and said he wanted disclosure. Lou Elizondo's been the biggest one to try to push that narrative. Mellon's fringed on it. But all I'm saying is this is disingenuous. And that's why I don't want to play. Don't tell somebody, if they'd have come out and said, there's a threat, I wouldn't necessarily agree with it unless I saw 100% proof it was a threat. But that we need to get this done to protect the American citizens first. And then possibly there may be a threat coming down the road or whatever. So we're not going to, well, Bigelow did that. We're just going to get confirmation. But the rest of these guys play this game of cat and mouse where most of these people defend them and think that we're going to get disclosure. And that's disingenuous. And I don't want to be tied to that. I'm grateful that Green, who's part of this group, helped me get my settlement and my surgery. And I said that when he leaked out the fact that he was involved and he laid out some of what injured me and that my records are classified. But what I'm not or will not do is sell my integrity to the public and tell them something that I don't believe is true. And I stick with this. Based on all my interactions with these people, everything that I've seen, my military background, will not sit there and sell you a bill of goods that disclosure will ever happen. And I don't want to be tied to that part of it, where they're making people believe that disclosure is going to happen.
Man, I for one hope you're wrong and with the disclosure stuff, because I do believe that it would help change a lot of the stuff that is going on in the world right now.
Can I interview you for a second? Because I've done this myself.
Of course.
Please tell me, based on the way the world is, and don't say that whatever would be released would then make the world get along better. I mean, Reagan said he sometimes believed that if there was a threat from above, we would come together. Okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
But what if, and I say this not because I know 100%, but what if they're already here? And as Bigelow said, they're mixed in with us.
Well, there is already a lot of talk about this, that they have been influencing political decisions for a while, right?
Well, no, I'm not going down that line. I'm going down the line of, if the world got told tomorrow that they're here for real, that they're among us, that they're mixed in with us, and they didn't explain why, which is what they would do. But let's just say, for just a hypothetical minute, they were studying DNA. Why were they doing that? Why were they looking at people's bloodlines? Why were they looking at people's minds, the people that had an interaction with this? They were trying to see why they had the interaction, what was going on. And then what if whatever we're dealing with is what was behind the creation of
us?
Yes, of us. That would completely destroy religion, which, by the way, we're about to go to war. There's a chance we're going to go to war over religion in the Middle East. How would that set with? I'm just asking. People sit there and say they want the answer. How can you want an answer? And I know it's a catch-22. If you don't know what it could be, then you think you want to know. But what if that answer, well, we're already at each other's throats now, wouldn't calm us down, but would inflame it even worse?
It is entirely possible.
And that's one of the things I'm looking at. Okay. So I'm not against, just so as we close, and then maybe I'll let you finish your thoughts on why it would be a good thing. I'm not against these guys totally. I just don't feel they're being honest about the fact that when they were a government, they couldn't get it out. Why do they think the people that took their seats are going to get it out now? You know, that's not fair. That'd be like me sitting in your chair in a job, knowing the secret and saying, good luck, dude. There's a secret out there that, and you find out about it. And then I'm out there saying, he knows, and he needs to tell you,
Yeah. I'm going to sound like a doomer right now, what I'm going to tell you, but this is genuinely what I believe. I
Okay.
think that the world is so fucked up right now
Yeah.
that we need a traumatic experience in order to get out of this. And if that means that there's a lot of people that are gonna, the reality is gonna flip like that if this is announced, uh I think that there's gonna be probably a lot of societal disruption, as you say. But I also think, and I don't like thinking this too much because it would mean that we are really very indifferent to the world as it is. If this was revealed tomorrow, there's probably a lot of people that are not gonna give a shit. They want to go on with their lives and pay the rent and pay their bills, you know, at least not immediately.
Can I
There is going to
counter that?
be,
Can I counter that though?
sure, sure.
What if this stuff crashed the markets? What if, look at what COVID did? It practically ruined society. What if this stuff crashed the markets? You you better believe those people are going to take it serious then.
Oh, yeah.
They're going
Yeah.
to follow this thing because they're going to want to know why they can't go to work or why they don't have money in their bank account.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying 100% that that's what it would do, but just remember this: the people that are going to control this have never been honest with this for decades, if not, maybe a century. And you're going to trust them to come forward and tell you exactly what's going on and not want to manipulate it to control their narrative. And then whatever they release, then you're going to trust the people that get it are going to disseminate it properly and react accordingly.
This is exactly the debate that Christian and I have on Down to Earth, because I'm in your camp. I don't think that they're gonna be ever gonna be honest with what's going on. And Christian wants disclosure to happen through the government, through the official channels, because he feels like if this happens officially, more people are gonna look at it and more people are gonna be aware of what's going on. But I don't think that's realistic based on the history they have of hiding stuff from humanity. So I'm on your camp on this specific issue. But I also think that there's a lot of really good people in the government. It's not a monolith, you know. You worked in the government. I think you're a good person. Uh, and I think that those people are also asking the questions you're asking or the ones that I'm asking.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
but there's a small group that control the narrative, and they control the press. They control all of this, and they control what information you're going to get. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not happy with the Mellon Group, as I call them, is because they're doing the same thing. They are. Could you get in? I was told before I came on your show that you wanted to interview Gary Nolan.
I want to interview everyone,
Right,
but
but you
they've
reached
been,
out to them and they wouldn't.
yeah, they've been avoiding me and telling me stuff that
Is
they're
that
they're very
fair?
busy. I don't
Is
know.
that
I'm new to
no?
this.
That's
I don't.
not fair, though. It's not fair. You can't make a statement and then not be willing to discuss it. And they're selective on who they want to discuss it with.
Yeah,
So they're controlling the narrative. They're controlling exactly what kind of information and how you're going to get it. And they're telling the people out there to trust them. The very people that worked inside government in these top secret projects and didn't disclose anything then, but now they want you to trust them that they'll take care of it now. I I'll take heat for this. I don't care. You know, I don't care. I don't believe, again, like I've said over and over, that we'll ever get the truth. And then again, say tomorrow they come out and say something. How are you going to look how they lied about COVID? If you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. If you wear the mask, you won't get COVID. They went out. The president of the United States said that.
yeah. That's
And
an
then how
entirely
much?
different subject, but
And three? No. But it's just how this would play out. If they'll lie about that, why do you think that they'll tell you the truth about that? About what's going on if we're not alone.
yeah,
And they'll tell you the truth. And the only way that the truth would that their narrative would ever get destroyed would be as if you came out with somebody that could prove them otherwise. But remember how hard they fought those very people online. They were closing down websites, they were closing down podcasts and stuff for people that were challenging. They were threatening doctors when the doctors initially came out and said, no, this vaccine, number one, hasn't been proven safe, and number two, it won't keep you from getting COVID. They were threatening to take their medical license. So yes, it is. It's different, but it's not. If they'll deal with a virus like that, how do you think they're going to deal with it if we're not a loner?
In a very disorganized way.
I don't think that was all disorganized. I think that was all.
I'm gonna tell you my experience with that specific with the pandemic because I'm my parents were both doctors, and I feel like there was a difference between how it was handled in the US compared to how it was handled in other countries.
Right.
Specifically, Five Eyes, they handled it very similarly, like New Zealand, the US, the UK, Australia. But here in Mexico, it was very different, man. And I gotta tell you, my mom was running a hospital back then when it all went down, and she was firsthand experience on what happened in there. And I can tell you that in terms of the vaccines, they did save a lot of lives. That is true. But the narrative that was coming from the US, it was very strange how they were painting it. And I don't understand why. I mean, I do. I mean, Big Pharma has a grip on everything, especially the media. But I can tell you from firsthand, because I'm the son of a doctor that ran a hospital, the vaccines did work here in Mexico.
Right. But I'm not arguing about that the vaccines worked or not. The problem with that was that they weren't vetted properly, and a lot of people got sick
Yeah,
from
yeah,
them. And they
yeah.
didn't, and they want and they mandated the fact that you had to have them, or they were trying to push that. What I'm saying is the United States drove the narrative on the vaccine. The
Yeah.
United States will drive the narrative on are we alone or not. And when the president of the United States lied about the vaccine and the mask and everything else, why then should you believe those very same people when not discrediting the people that died, got sick from COVID? That was a huge deal. But I'd have to say, if they ever were going to expose we're not alone, it would be even a little bit bigger than that. And if you couldn't trust them on something like this, which had nothing to do with weapons or war or anything else, but just humanity itself and the safety of humanity, why then can you trust them? They're going to tell you the truth about that.
Yeah.
And
I
the
agree.
scientists themselves that got up in front of the TV and lied. They lied. And our doctors over here were afraid to tell you the truth, because if you went out and said they said that, they could get their license. That's all I'm saying. That was a big enough deal there that's to me tells me you can't trust the government even if they told you something.
Yeah, I agree. I agree there.
So there you go.
Oh man.
That's how I feel. That's why I'm going to control what little narrative I have on what happened to me. I'm going to tell the whole story with proof, and anything I put out there, I can prove an email, a document or whatever. I'm going to lay it out there and let everybody see it. And then it'll take its life. And there'll be people saying that's disclosure. There'll be people saying it's not, that I didn't get injured by a UAP. It'll run its life. But ultimately, at least I was honest about it.
Yeah.
I got to control the narrative on how what happened to
Yours
me is
on your
presented,
story.
and
Yeah.
the truth behind it, not this combobulation of stuff that gets all put together in a big ball and it doesn't come back out the way it's supposed to be. So
That's a major problem that I've seen since I got here because I have a media analysis background and I've seen how they spin things constantly, everybody. And I think that needs to change. And there's a group of people who are common on the scene, podcasters, journalists, because when this 2017 thing started, it did wake up a lot of people. You can't deny that. And when I saw David Fravor talking about his experience, that's what convinced me. That I was like, okay, so this has something to it. And I think that they're not going to be able to control everybody,
Yeah, but see
because
that,
it's
but
too many of us. It's too
yeah,
many of us.
but here's the thing though. David Fravor is a classic example of this. Based on his background, allegedly, and I say background, not that he didn't have it, but I find it hard to believe he doesn't understand physics better than he came off as. He claimed that what he saw we couldn't do. But if you go forward from that statement, now all the stuff that's been leaking out about DARPA and all the stuff they're working on, some of what he saw and the way his radars were affected and everything else can be explained. So either he really wasn't in the know at all about
I
any of
don't think
this.
he was when that
Well,
happened. I don't
yeah,
think he
but
was.
when you're a pilot, you have to understand countermeasures. Not because we do countermeasures to cover the aircraft that are out there in flying and stuff. A UAP is going to be used or is being used for countermeasures. It can affect radars, it can affect what you see, how you see it, and everything else. So he was on a fine line talking about what he understood about what we were capable of, and whether or not he understood that some of what we saw could or could not be explained by our technology. If he said that, then he would probably get in trouble for revealing classified material. So all I'm getting at is he was at a higher level than I was at the time when I went out in the field on briefings on countermeasures technology. Plus, he was 30 plus years ahead of what we've got. And some of this technology I'm aware of because I've experienced it in the Middle East back during the Gulf War and the Bosnia War. So all I'm getting at is there's just a fine line. But at the time, I said back in 1980 and early on, I couldn't explain it. But now I can. I can explain a lot of it. There's a lot of proof to do that. So it's there, guys. And it does this part of their driving right now, at least publicly, that's been out, and some privately that I'm aware of, is to do with what a UAP is. And that doesn't mean it covers the whole realm of everything. It's just
Yeah.
this particular part of what are we alone or not. There's probably other things too. I'm not disagreeing with that. And people have attacked me for that. But this is what I'm focusing on is what happened at Rendlesham to me, what affected me physically and mentally, and how this plays into today's picture. And as we close, they came after me for my experience at Rendlesham, which in a declassified document was identified as a UAP. So
All right. Um, anything else you want to add about upcoming stuff you got? Maybe more interviews, or I don't know.
nothing right now. We're working on the project to get it together. If you want to post something on this about a weaponization series with Professor Simon, it lays out the technology and the advancements of it, including Foo Fighters and all this, how it started back in World War II. So we have a series out that if they want to look at it. I also have a book that's still available online called Weaponization of UAP. And in that, it shows a response I got from the MOD where I directly challenged them on, are they working on technology involving UAPs? And they said they were. They blacked it all out, but they acknowledged in the FOIA that they were definitely working on UAP technology
Whoa. I'm
for
gonna leave all
weaponization.
of that in the description though, so people can check it out. I want to thank you, John, for being on the show. I hope this is not the only time we speak. I hope you can come back sometime in the future, maybe after the video is released.
Sure,
So
sure,
thank you very much for being on
right.
Psicoactivo, man.
And just remember, I'm going to use a Professor Simon line. The truth is out there, but I'm going to add one more thing. You have to open up your eyes.
That's
You have to
perfect.
look at all possibilities, not just what they want you to look at.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Okay. So thank you, John. You have a
Thanks.
good one. And until next time,
You too.
guys, please like, share, comment, subscribe. You know the gist. Thank you. Have a good one.